GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 132.
Episode 132, my babies.
It is going to be the Buffalo Bills at the Washington Commanders. Before we get started here, as always, you can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. As always, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well to stay up to date on the latest podcast. I am Ryan Wolfe, joined by John Cimino. As always, John, my man, how you doing on this wonderful Tuesday evening?
I am doing just dandy. I'm still I still, when I look at this episode sheet, when I see Washington Commanders, it still seems foreign to me. They will and forever will always be the Washington football team to me.
That's fair. I wasn't sure we were going with that one, but I agree with you. That was a bold decision. But
it was my favorite. It was like it's my favorite team name. Like
it's
you couldn't have gotten, for as much as I dislike Dan Snyder, the troll there I completely respected.
I agree with that. And at this point too, I just want to mention I have some sort of sinus thing going on that is absolutely just beating me to death. I'm exhausted.
Oh,
and
dude, it's like stuff going around.
What
man.
have I done?
Like I have to take a COVID test. And I'm negative, but we're in the 9 to 5. Yes, I'm very negative. You ask my ex-wife. Anywho, she don't listen to this shit. I don't care. Fuck her. But my kids do. My kids do though. So, anyways, that's all right. Censor it post-op. But no, there was in the place of business 9 to 5, the normal 9 to 5, there was someone nearby. I guess they didn't give names or anything. I'm assuming because of privacy and all that. So I have no idea if it even actually happened. It would be hilarious if it wasn't, and they were just like, oh, everybody's got to go home, but they sent us home because there was a potential for exposure. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll go home. Cool. And so yeah, but things are going around and I actually feel a little headachy today. So that's kind of where the test is coming into play, just to be sure. Cause it's been about a few days since the initial send home. So you never know. I may get 5 more days at home.
I mean, I don't ever leave my house, so the fact that I got sick is just it's a modern miracle here. It's like the immaculate conception or whatever, immaculate reception.
But you know what? Allergies are really bad too. Like they're real bad this year. So it could be that.
I'm just ready for it to be winter straight up, so that way we don't have this hot, cool. Just be cold. I'm cool with it. I'm ready.
That's right. Indeed.
Hey, speaking of being cold, John. The Buffalo Bills, man, holy cannoli. They let the Washington football team rip. The Washington Commanders have it on Sunday, man. 37-3. What a beat them down that game was on Sunday.
As I was watching that on the split screen, I was like, I think I actually texted you, Ryan. I was like, I don't think we're going to have a whole lot to talk about in terms of the Buffalo Bills and their performance on this game. Like we called it at the very end of last week's podcast. We knew that it was going to be like that they were going to have a pretty easy time with it. But I think we gave like some courtesy points to the football team just because they're pros, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that I was not expecting. Like the only thing that was more surprising, I think, than that was the Dolphins Broncos game. and that score, a 50
which will
a 50-point difference. Like,
yeah,
that was like, this was close, but not that close.
and we'll talk about that here, kind of a teaser later on in the podcast, because the Bills do play the Dolphins. But before we get there, John, I'll break down the fourth wall here. Going into the half, I was thinking, man, this podcast is going to go a specific way. Even if the Bills only win 16-0, they looked a little lifeless where they just weren't finishing things in the first half of the game. But as the game went on, they just pinned the ears back, both offensively and defensively. Sunday was head coach Sean McDermott's 100th regular season game as a head coach of the Bills, joining Lou Saban, who had 117 games, and Marv Levy, who had 182 games as the three head coaches in franchise history to coach 100-plus regular season games.
Crazy to me still, even now that it is fluid and more time has passed where the Bills have been successful than have not been in the McDermott era. Like, it's really crazy when you start seeing these names that we've followed for this entire podcast journey start getting into the upper echelon of Buffalo Bills lore, like team, like historical, like you're like Mount Rush, almost getting to Mount Rushmore of Buffalo Bills, like players and coaches and records and things like that. It's really, really cool, but also still kind of really weird to see, like, wow, it's really happening, like live and shown off living color in front of us. You know what I mean?
Well, the nice thing too is that
we're no longer talking about it in the historical, like where we were season one, where we're like, oh man, I remember in the 90s, it was like this, and like, no, like we're living in we're living in the era right now, like a new, like this version's, 1990s, like successful teams, like we're living it in the present, and it's really cool.
Well, and Sean McDermott's record is now 64-36. His 640 win percentage, best percentage winning percentage in team history. Also, the 34-point win on Sunday is the largest.
Wait, what was the win? What was the win total?
A 30 for McDermott.
Yeah, 64.
64-36, a 640 win percentage.
Oh, he's getting 5. He's getting 5 more wins this season.
That'd be real nice. That'd be the nicest victory that Sean McDermott's ever had.
I'm going to lay this out here right now. And I'm just going to say this flat out. When Sean McDermott gets the 69th win, you already are going to know the whole tone of the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think rightfully so. I mean, what else are we expected to do? The 34-point win is the largest margin of victory against Washington in the series history, surpassing a 25-point victory against Washington in 1996. If there's one thing the Buffalo Bills like to do, it's beat up on the Washington Commanders since the Bills lost to them in the Super Bowl many moons ago. So again, you feel for Sam Howell. He's probably really sore this week, but I mean, that was rough. But
well, that's why they play the game. He's a pro. He'll brush it off. He'll come back.
Yeah, you played to win the game, right?
Yeah. He'll come back, and the football team will probably lose again, but it's okay. He'll come back.
I mean, that's absolutely fair. Looking at it too, it definitely is a situation where Buffalo flexed their muscles offensively and defensively, and we're going to talk about it here in our three big things, John.
Yes, sir.
The three big things brought to you by puckluck.com. Hockey is around the corner, John. It is the end of September, almost October, almost time for the Buffalo Sabres, almost time for the Rochester Americans, or whichever team you root for. Either way, puckluck.com, your one-stop resource for all of your National Hockey League sports betting action. Puckluck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, though, puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA. Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. John, our first of the three big things, dissecting the offense here, and we're going to start off with quarterback Josh Allen. Which, John, if you could hit me with it one time here, please. Josh Allen.
You got it twice. You got it.
Dog. Twice. Josh Allen.
Let's try one more time.
Dog.
There we go.
Josh Allen, dog, by all means. 20 of 32 passing, 218 yards, 1 touch, one interception, which I'm getting sick of hearing the phrase arm punt, but it was an arm punt, which it all goes in the book as the same thing.
Arm punt? I'm afraid you kept that one from me. This is the first time I've heard that one.
It's where you yeet the ball down the field and they intercept it, but it's in like the range of where you would ultimately punt the ball. So the interception essentially becomes like an arm punt where you're like, okay,
that makes sense.
It was a turnover, but you were going to punt the ball anyway. So you take a shot, you get picked off. If you didn't make the catch, you're going to punt it anyway. So it's really
right.
There's there's always risk, but at that point, it's really, is there how much risk? I don't know. But Allen also had 3 rushes for 46 yards and 1 touchdown. And on that touchdown, he had a very beautiful Jordan-esque leap into the end zone, which was fantastic. Get this, Allen now has 3,166 career rushing yards, surpassing old friend Devin Singletary for 10th all-time in franchise history. Next up for Allen, 9th all-time, CJ Spiller, whom Allen is trailing by 145 rushing yards. So not sure when that will happen, but soon enough, I'd have to think, because the rushing isn't stopping for Josh Allen. And even though he only had 218 rushing yards on Sunday, the reason why he was able to do that, John, running back James Cook, again, 15 carries, 98 yards, 2 receptions on 3 targets for 14 yards. The running game is developing before our eyes. James Cook is developing before our eyes. And as you can see with Josh Allen, he only has to do so much. He doesn't have to do everything. And despite having 2 touchdowns on Sunday, the defense picked it up, which we'll talk about here shortly. But James Cook, again, looked electric in the backfield.
And yes, and that feeds the absolute point we've been making on this podcast for the last few years, which is if they can get the running game, Josh Allen doesn't really have to be Superman. He's just got to be man. He needs to, with Cook's ability the last couple of games, especially, that running game, opposing defenses have to now plan for the potential of the ball being transferred and someone else other than Josh Allen doing something really good with it running.
Well, and it's crazy, John, because what happens when you get good running? You got to put more guys. You got to put more guys in the box, and then guess what happens? You've got Josh Allen with one-on-one coverage or one-on-one in the defensive backfield, and all of a sudden you're like,
opens up the play action too. Opens up the play action too, where maybe Josh Allen doesn't abandon the run every single game, but instead of running, 5-10 times, he's only running three times for 46 yards. You know what I mean? And that right there is an adjustment as well, for the better for the Buffalo Bills, certainly for the worst for the any opposing defense when that ability is opened up for him to be able to have the option instead of be the option. Ooh, you're talking a completely different dynamic there.
It's just very weird to see. I mean, again, it's 3 games, but the progress that we've seen continues to stay there, continues to grow off of it. I mean, I didn't put this in the podcast here, but I'm just gonna pop this up real quick right now. After Monday Night Football, where DeAndre Swift again continued to go off for the Philadelphia Eagles, James Cook is 3rd in the NFL with 267 rushing yards, behind Christian McCaffrey and DeAndre Swift, 353 and 308 respectively. But again, the Buffalo Bills are able to utilize James Cook. James Cook is able to utilize his running ability. The thing I like about Cook now is that he still dances a little, but he's hitting the hole and he's accelerating through the hole. That's exactly what the Buffalo Bills have needed to see from James Cook. But also, I think it's the whole running game setup that they have seems to be working very well so far between
it's about time.
Yeah, absolutely. Between James Cook, Damian Harris, who essentially becomes like a James Cook stunt double, if you will, and then you've got Latavius Murray, who you bring in to just say,
"Was I supposed to do the dog for James Cook too?" Or
hit me with it. I don't dog. We're going to do this the whole podcast because look, guess what? There's one thing we did recently. We added a couple new sounds to the soundboard, so we're having fun with it today. But also, I love the fact that when the Bills play like absolute dogs, that we can at least call it out and give them the credit that they do.
Dog.
Speaking of dogs, Wide receiver Stephon Diggs, 8 receptions for 111 yards on 12 targets. He surpassed the 9,000-yard career receiving yard mark on Sunday. After the game, he now has 9,091 career receiving yards. But he's one of 6 active players with 9,000 plus receiving yards. He joins DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans, Travis Kelce, Devontae Adams, and Keenan Allen. Pretty good group of players. But also,
indeed,
it was his 33rd career 100-yard game, which I did look this up.
Mm-hmm.
The top 10 starts with Michael Irvin and Torrey Holt, tied at 47 career 100-plus yard games. That's
insane. That is insane to me. That's insane
consistency.
To me. That, you know what that tells me right there?
But you got that right, my man. And that's one thing I didn't look up either. It's funny because I'm trying to type and talk at the same time, and I just typed in Torrey Hot and Michael Irvin spelled Irivin, but thankfully Google knows that I'm a complete moron and fixed it for me. So Michael Irvin had 40 out of 159 games, 47 100-yard games, 173 games for Torrey Holt, 47 of those were 100-yard games. For Stephon Diggs, again, having trouble typing here. Apparently my brain is not working. 122 career games, 33 100-yard games. Not bad for Diggs on the outside.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. And you know, again, when you've got that running game opened up, man, again, it kind of really it opens up everything there. Everybody's everybody's kind of getting their shine, getting their call outs, and you know, a lot of that is due to that running game opening up. I mean, we've been calling it out for a while. It's about time. It's nice to see that we were correct in our assessment here.
I'm looking here right now, and Josh Allen, according to fantasypros.com, it's the first thing I found. I'm sorry if this is incorrect. Air yards per attempt. How far are passes traveling in the air before being caught? Mm-hmm. And right now, Josh Allen is middle of the pack at 4 yards. So essentially, you've got Allen at 4.0, Mahomes at 4.0, Jordan Love at 4.0. While I'm not going to sit here and, you know, say Jordan Love is the next big thing, I'm going to look at Patrick Mahomes. What do the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes do so well? They're able to get the ball out into the hands of their talented running backs, receivers, tight ends, giving them the open space to run with the ball. That's, if this Buffalo offense continues to develop in that direction, the sky is the limit. Because you can't always just yeet the ball downfield and hope to God that Gabe Davis is going to half-ass it like he did on that arm punt we talked about, where there was minimal effort to try to break it up, which that's a different conversation for a different time. But what they're doing with Stephon Diggs, high amount of targets, high amount of receptions, and you let him take the ball and do Stephon Diggs type things, either breaking tackles, juking out defenders, whatever it may be, putting yourself in the best position to succeed. And this is a good example of how Buffalo's offense has developed already early this season, despite the fact that, yes, I will agree, Ken Dorsey has made some bonehead decisions and some questionable calls in the first 3 games of the season, but this isn't the playoffs. This isn't the Super Bowl. Things develop over time. The offense develops over time.
Right. Yeah, now's the time to make those mistakes, if anything.
If it's December 26th or January 26th and they're still doing this stuff, then I'll worry. But putting a bow on the offense here, or putting, as I so adorably have put it, putting a bow on the O. Thank you. Buffalo had a field goal drive in the second quarter, John, where they used up 9 minutes and 47 seconds off the clock. That's their longest drive by time since October 1st, 2017 at Atlanta, when they used 11 minutes and 20 seconds on a field goal drive. So again, looking at this right now, they are getting the ball, they are maintaining possession, and they are eating up the clock. So that way,
that is 3 big things you need to do.
And that's how you beat good teams, though. Like with Washington, you know, they probably could have still had a very good day had they not held the ball so long. But with that being said, the only way to beat the Patrick Mahomes of the world, is to make sure that you keep the ball out of their hands.
Right.
And
yep.
again, another example of Buffalo doing this. I'm going to get the stat popped up here because apparently I just did not fully run through all of the stats here. Buffalo outpossessed Washington 34 minutes and 39 seconds to 25 minutes and 21 seconds. That will take possessions away from Washington, the ability to come back away from Washington, and that's how you win football games, by just essentially beating the life out of your opponent.
Yes. I'm sorry. I was a little distracted there.
That's
but,
okay. Well, the other thing I'll
putting the bow on the O. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, put a bow on an O. Another thing that Buffalo did very well on Sunday, which you want to see continuing, 60% on third down. They were 9 for 15. John, they had 20 first downs, 10 passing, 10 rushing. I don't know how much more.
It doesn't get much more efficient than that. I mean, they did everything right. And when you do everything right and you do your job correctly and you do your job, that's a steal from Bill Belichick there, but you do your job, things are moving, things get done. And
absolutely,
it's on to the next one. In this case, it's on to the darling team of the week for ESPN, the Miami Dolphins. We'll get there though.
Yeah, before we get there, though, let's break down the defense. Linebacker Terrell Bernard. John, I think you know what to do here.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Did the sound come through there? I'm sorry.
I lost the sound. I think we broke the button.
Did we break it?
I'm not hearing it, so I think so.
What I'm sorry. What were you asking? We're new at this.
Linebacker.
Did you say hit? Did you say hit you with the button?
Linebacker Terrell Bernard.
Dog.
There we go.
All right.
7 tackles, 5 solo, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, a fumble recovery, and an interception. He's the first Bill in franchise history to do this.
Dog.
Furthermore, though, even bigger, he's the first NFL player since Bears Hall of Fame linebacker Brian Urlacher on December 17th, 2007 at Minnesota to record at least 2 sacks, 1 pick, and 1 fumble recovery in the same game.
Well, Bernard, I think, you know what? There's one thing to say about that.
Dog.
You're not kidding. I mean, like I said, we're going to get a lot of use out of that sound today. May not get that much use in every podcast, but today, as I'm writing the podcast, the reason I pulled the sound was because looking through this defense, just unbelievable on Sunday. Bernard has back-to-back or interceptions in back-to-back games. He's the first off-ball Bills linebacker to tally 2+ sacks in a game since A.J. Klein versus Seattle on November 8th, 2020. He's also, he being Terrell Bernard, the third Buffalo player with 2 sacks and a pick in the same game, joining Cornelius Bennett, who had 2 sacks and a pick on December 23rd, 1989 versus the Jets, and Jerry Hughes, who had 2 sacks and 1 pick on October 25th, 2020, also at the New York Jets. So again,
Cornelius Bennett, also a
dog.
Yeah, you're not kidding. And Jerry Hughes was one of those drought dogs for sure. He was a drought dog. He was very good here while the Bills were getting good, and now he plays in Houston. But the biggest thing about this Sean McDermott-led defense was how would they adjust to new play calling, to having the head coach call the plays. That was the same exact thing in both sentences. Yep, and also, how would they replace Tremaine Edmonds in the middle? And they gave the keys to the car to Terrell Bernard, and boy, has that move paid off in spades. Because look they don't have to pay Tremaine Edmonds a ton of cash, and they have a very talented player, potentially even better than Tremaine Edmonds, in the center of that defense, calling the plays, leading the way. And dude, it was an absolute defensive clinic. That's the word I'm looking for on Sunday.
Oh yeah.
Defensive end. Like, John, I'm just going to run down the stats because there's so freaking many of them.
Yes.
Defensive end AJ Epinesa had a solo tackle. He had a sack, a tackle for a loss, an interception, a touchdown. It's his first career interception and first career touchdown. Buffalo's first pick 6 since by a defensive lineman since Aaron Schobel on September 14th, 2009 at New England. It's Epinesa's first touchdown scored since he returned a fumble for a touchdown while playing for Iowa versus Illinois on November 17th, 2018. Dominating on D. It gets even crazier than this.
Unreal.
9 total sacks tying the third most in team history. As mentioned, Terrell Bernard had 2, Daquan Jones had 1.5, Ed Oliver 1.5, Leonard Floyd had 2, which puts him up to 51 career sacks. Greg Rousseau had 1, AJ Epinesa also had 1. The first time in franchise history, John, that 4 members of Buffalo's defense produced a multi-sack performance in a single game. And hey, don't forget,
I won't.
Von Miller can return in week 5 at Jacksonville in London.
Oh boy.
So this defense is going to get better than they already are.
That's pretty scary there when you think about, just the way that everything has been working on defense. Like, this defense was scary alone. Now you're talking about adding a future Hall of Famer in Von Miller potentially by week 5. It's going to give some opposing offense quite a bit of trouble there.
Yeah, I mean, especially because you look at guys like Greg Rousseau, who you're waiting for a guy like Rousseau to make that next step.
Yep.
But as he has played this year, it looks like he is actively making that step, which is great, which then benefits guys like Ed Oliver, benefits guys like Daquan Jones and AJ Epinesa, even Leonard Floyd. It helps out, which I don't know how defenses are going to handle that line, but that's a good problem to have.
Absolutely.
To close the loop as well, I know I said the 9 sacks were tied for third most in team history. Buffalo also had 9 sacks versus the Jets on January 9th, 2022. They had 10 sacks versus Washington October 30th, 2011. And the team record currently 11 sacks at Denver on December 13th, 1964. It's the 6th time.
Very long time ago. The old AFL days.
Yeah, that's a very long time ago.
Buffalo, have you ever seen just to kind of
sure,
off topic here a little bit. I was watching this. Apparently, it aired on Showtime. Maybe when it was like the anniversary of the AFL, like and all those teams were like putting on the old uniforms, like how the Bills wore the standing buffalo, and then the Jets would wear like the Titans in New York, and like that era. There was a series that came out on Showtime called Full Color Football that told the story of the AFL. It's a really fascinating 5-part series. I found it on YouTube. I highly recommend Bills fans watch it just so that way you can fully understand not just the history of the organization, the AFL, but just really like how Buffalo really was like back then, like the history of your team. That was a real good look back at some of the teams of the AFL that really established themselves and in a way forced themselves into what we now know as the National Football League, the American Football Conference, National Football Conference. Like the AFL teams, like the Bills, the Jets, the Broncos, like all those guys, they were considered like the renegades, and it was really fascinating. So if you have the opportunity, search up Full Color Football on YouTube. You will not be disappointed. It's a very, very good look at the history of this team as well as all the other AFL ones.
I'm popping it up right now so I can make sure to make a note of that.
Yeah, just the 11 sacks versus Denver in 1964. Like, I remember hearing something about that actually in one of those episodes where they were talking about how because back then in those days the NFL was very like old school, like Vince Lombardi ball, where they're ground and pound, like the old, Johnny Unitas, like names like that, right? Bart Starr, like, and the NFL had its own certain thing. And then the AFL kind of was like this, like, it was like Nirvana in the 90s, right? Where rock had been done a certain way and then Nirvana came and just changed the game. That's kind of what like the AFL did. They were the organization that had the names on the back of the jerseys. They were bringing up the West Coast offense. They were, focusing on the personalities and the different people and really building their brand. Not to bring this podcast to Jets talk here, but they talked about how the Jets, the guarantee Super Bowl III.
Yep.
How big that really was, not just for football in the AFL, but just in general, like a landmark. Like they were talking about like all the AFL players were like, they would all go to the Super Bowl to root for the AFL team that was playing against the NFL team. And when the Jets had won Super Bowl III, and then the AFL did like an all-star game afterward. Like everybody was like thanking, like, yo, you won this for us. Like it's really cool. It's really cool. It's really freaking cool. Like it's such a different game now than it was back then. But again, Full Color Football is the name of the series.
I did find it on YouTube. I did find it on YouTube, so you should be able to find it.
It's brilliant. It's really a brilliant series, and you can tell like how how segmented they really were. Like the NFL people wanted it the NFL way, and they always looked at the AFL as inferior, and it's just really cool. So if you guys get a chance, take a look at that.
Coming back to the game here with Buffalo, wrapping it all up here. I like to tie it back in. It works very well. I like that. Mm-hmm. It's the 6th time in the Super Bowl era and the first time since 1995 that a defense sacked the quarterback 9+ times and picked him off 4+ times.
That's unbelievable.
Again, something we've not seen very much, if ever,
in nearly 30 years. 6 times it's happened.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah,
think about all the games.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Super Bowl era, so it was, I think they said 1966. It's happened 6 times since 1966. That's crazy.
Yes.
Including
first time since 95. I'm sorry. First time since 95. But even then, first time since 1995. Again, almost 30 years between times it's happened. I mean, Super Bowl era, that's we're up there, man. That's really
you're not kidding. Hey, so if you're an opposing quarterback in your first 5 career starts versus Buffalo since 2017, you're going to have a bad time. They have an 0-8 record, 3 combined touchdowns to 20 combined interceptions and 29 sacks. So again, if you are a new quarterback within your first 5 games against Buffalo Bills, strap up.
Welcome to the league, rookie.
You're not kidding here. Speaking of getting to the quarterback, Buffalo, according to Pro Football Reference, the Buffalo Bills lead the NFL in sack percentage over 15%, while blitzing the least amount of time, less than 10% of the time. It's absolutely incredible how much natural pressure they're getting on the quarterback just because of the talent they have on that line and on the ends. Like I said, Von Miller's coming back here soon.
You know, I feel like we may have found the answer to the question that we had in the preseason podcast of how the defense was going to adjust to Leslie Frazier being out and Sean McDermott calling the defensive plays and acting as DC. Yeah, I think they're pretty okay.
Yeah, we'll give him his flowers here in a little bit, but right now, not bad. Cornerback Tre'Davious White recorded his 18th career interception. That's tied for 15th in franchise history. He also shares a spot with Henry Jones and Mike Stratton. And since entering the NFL in 2018, White leads all NFL defenders with 20 second-half takeaways. And John, last but not least, long snapper Reed Ferguson, congrats to him, played in his 100th career regular season game on Sunday.
Well, I'll say that, you know what, Reed Ferguson, you are a dog.
Hey, man.
Congrats on 100 games.
He's one of the good ones.
Yes,
what we're going to do, we're going to throw it to a quick commercial break. We'll be back wrapping up week 3 and looking ahead. So stick around for more Trust the Podcast here on the Gear Radio Network. And we are back here on Trust the Podcast, our third of the 3 big things here this week, John. Wrapping up week 3, it's our Around the NFL, brought to you by our friends over at Go Frost Yourself.
Yes, indeed. Located in Rochester, New York, Go Frost Yourself does what other local bakeries do not. They bake from scratch, Ryan. They create recipes themselves, and they use the best and freshest ingredients they can find to create delicious flavors for customers daily. Molly and Jen have worked tirelessly to create what Go Frost Yourself has become today, and their passion can be tasted in the items that they bake. When you find yourself looking for an item for a special occasion, or maybe you just want to try their incredible cinnamon rolls, if you're local, you can visit Go Frost Yourself storefront at 2544 Ridgeway Avenue or at gofrostyourself.com.
I like that. You did a very good job there, and you also picked up on it that I was shooting it over to you. That's a nice little breaking down the fourth wall. Good work, John.
Well, you know what it is, because we in the podcast world, we are some dogs.
You're loving. I love that you're loving this, because now you're just going to be saying it all the time.
I'm not saying it's not so much that. It's just
you're going to be in a conversation. You're just going to drop a dog on someone, and they're going to go.
I may.
Sure.
Well, I could either drop a dog or I could drop a deuce.
Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome. Had to give one.
Kansas City Chief quarterback Patrick Mahomes reaches 25,000 career passing yards in his 83rd career game, passing Matthew Stafford for the quickest to 25,000 yards in an NFL career. Stafford did it in 90 games. probably talk about Mahomes again next week because he's one touchdown pass away from 200 career passing touchdowns. But John, the biggest news out of Kansas City this week.
Oh, I haven't heard this one. I've been waiting for this one all week, Ryan. What's the biggest news?
It shook the world. It shook the NFL, the entertainment world, the whole world as a whole. Taylor Swift in the Kelce family suite, confirming all the rumors, man, that we all thought that they were seeing each other. And look at, man, the Swifties don't mess around. Travis Kelce, 7 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown on Sunday. Nice. Oh, you're giving me sounds in the background. Thank you.
I'm giving you music. Sorry, buddy. Keep going.
I don't know how long we can do this without getting in trouble. Gained over 300,000. He gained over 300,000 social media followers, a 400% increase in merchandise sales. He now has the top second selling jersey in NFL. That's the Taylor Swift effect right there, my friends.
Indeed it is. And we also have an affiliation with iTunes I can use as a backup, so don't worry about that.
You just scared the absolute daylights out of me.
I am sorry. I didn't. We're still learning in progress here, but don't worry. We'll be a little bit more fluid as the weeks. But
hey, look at man. Good for Travis Kelce. It was funny too because Bill Belichick mentioned that Travis Kelce's had a lot of big catches in his career, but this one might be the biggest.
You know what? Bill Belichick knows what he's doing, though.
For that comment, he's a dog for sure.
All of those times where he's always been like, on to Cincinnati, and everybody's like, oh, what the hell? This guy doesn't have a personal. Every expatriate I've heard, like Randy Moss talks about it. Tom Brady's talked about it a number of times. Ty Law's talked about it. Bill Belichick's got a low key troll, and he's very, very funny. And that Julian was a very, very funny comment from him.
He has the best Bill Belichick stories, but also does a spot on Bill Belichick impression. I'll send that over to you here after the podcast.
Oh, sure, sure.
The Chargers, they lose their top wide receiver, Mike Williams, who tore his ACL in a 28-24 win over Minnesota. He will understandably miss the remainder of the season, but is expected to be ready for training camp next summer. Also, Houston, a 37-17 victory over Jacksonville. Quarterback C.J. Stroud became the first quarterback in NFL history to have at least 900 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and no interceptions in his first 3 career starts. That's according to ESPN Stats and Information Research. They were talking after the game, saying that, hey, look at, we got our guy. This is the guy. This is who we're building around, and we're going to have a damn good time doing it. And C.J. Stroud looks like the real deal.
I feel like I see that exact script for every single football team not named the New York Jets. Like, I never see that for the Jets. I see it for everybody else. Freaking Houston now? Come on now. It's good for them, though. It's good for them, though. Good for them. I can't hate.
I mean, CJ Stroud is pretty talented. Let's just put it there. Also, one last thing that I did not put in here because I did not want to spoil it, John. The Broncos have now lost 3 games by 50 or more points in franchise history, which ties Denver for most by an NFL franchise with the Rochester Jeffersons, who left the. It ties them with the Rochester Jeffersons, who left the NFL after 1925, but a nice local tie.
Indeed, a nice little local tie and a great opportunity to use the Price is Right horn there. I don't know what Russ is still cooking out there in Denver, but if it's Sean Payton's cookbook is certainly not translating to a successful restaurant experience there.
I like how you put that. And hey, keeping it local, looking ahead, week 4, Bills versus the Miami Dolphins, hosting them at Highmark Stadium, 1 p.m. Eastern time on CBS. Miami.
Unbelievable. I wish they could flex the games.
Oh, absolutely.
This early in the season, because that should be where Kansas City and New York are right now. Like, I know that the schedule makers, they thought they were going to get Mahomes versus Rodgers. They're getting Mahomes versus Wilson. No one wants to watch. I don't even want to watch that. I would rather watch this game at 8:00 on Sunday night.
So, and this is why it's not just because it's a divisional matchup. It's probably 2 of the better teams in the NFL facing off. Miami's 3-0 coming off a victory over Denver, 70-20. Hilarious.
It's unbelievable.
Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, who has proved to be the perfect quarterback for Mike McDaniel's system in Miami. He has 1,024 passing yards. That's second in the NFL. He has 8 touchdown passes, also second in the NFL, only 2 interceptions. Running back Raheem Mostert, 41 carries, 240 yards. That's 5th best in the league. 6 touchdowns, 1st in the league. Wide receiver Tyreek Hill, 25 receptions, 412 yards. That's 2nd in the league with the 412 yards. And his 4 touchdowns are 1st in the league. Miami offensively, 550.3 yards per game offensively. That's 1st in the league. They're 362 passing yards per game. 1st in the league. They're 188.3 rushing yards per game. Also 1st in the league. Now, Buffalo, they allow 253 yards per game. 2nd in the league. They have 12 sacks. Also 2nd in the league. And they're 142.3 passing yards per game. 3rd in the NFL. Now, John, this brings us to Sean McDermott. And thanks to a friend of the podcast, Chris Downey, who kind of gave me the idea. I took some creative license here to kind of fill in the blanks, but no pun intended. Sean McDermott has had a few defensive quizzes so far, which he has aced all of them, even in the loss to the Jets. Now it's time for the quarterly exam against Miami. Can McDermott turn the tides and show that he is truly the X factor for this dominant defense? Or are we looking at Miami coming in and just rolling over the Bills like they have everybody else so far this season?
I believe this is where the Dolphins' love is going to come to a screeching halt. Because you're not these aren't your daddy's Buffalo Bills, man. These Bills are tough. You don't think they're not listening to every single sports program that's going on right now, whether it's on TV, whether it's on streaming, radio, terrestrial radio, this podcast, hopefully, any other podcast. Like, they hear the noise. They hear that Miami and this 70 points. They beat the Broncos by 50 points. I mean, they were 3 points away from the record, the all-time NFL record in a game, which they chose not to go after. Respect there, but in the same, like, this team, of all the teams to do this with, like, if the Dolphins were coming in to Washington to play the Commanders, I would be like, yeah, okay. They could probably rest Tua for, you know what I mean? But this Buffalo Bills team, a bunch of, oh, hold on. The volume went down on me and God damn it. There we go. But this team is going to be prepped. This team is going to be ready for whatever. And I think that they're strong enough in defense to handle or at least reduce some of these yards that Miami's been gaining through the air in particular.
Well, and here's the thing.
They always play Tua tough as well.
Absolutely. But here's my thing. You know what Miami's going to bring to the table. They're going to bring speed. They have, if I'm not mistaken, I saw the stat was they have the top 6 runs in the NFL this year by miles per hour, all Dolphins. All of their players.
The Bills defense is going to be bringing strength, though.
Sure. And I'll get there. So you've got to be able to slow down the speed. The one thing that this Bills defense has always struggled with is slowing down Tyreek Hill because they're always playing some sort of zone defense. So it's what will Sean McDermott do now to adjust to that Tyreek Hill, because he's going to get his yards. He's going to get his points. This game will probably end up being a point total of, 60 points. I don't even know what the plus minus is this week. Let me double check and I'll get back to you on that one. But looking at it right now, you have to find a way to slow down that Miami offense.
Yeah.
And absolutely. If you can't slow that Miami offense down, you're going to have a horrible time. I know that sounds stupid. I know that sounds kind of redundant. Duh. Obviously, the over-under is 53.5. I would comfortably take the over on that one. I know the Bills' defense is fantastic, but as we've talked about in the past, John, there are weeks where the defense will win you the game. There are weeks when offense will win you the game. I need to see Josh Allen being smart with the football, sprinkling in the running game at the appropriate time, but defensively. The one thing that you'll notice if you go back and watch that Denver-Miami game is that Denver, you swear to God, they had some sort of slippery substance on them. They missed, according to PFF_Sam on Twitter, Denver's defense missed 24 tackles against Miami.
Oh, my God.
Every time you watch a highlight of a guy just bolting downfield, people are just whiffing or bouncing off the guy. So make sure when you get hands.
That's going to happen to Buffalo.
Well, that's been a thing that Buffalo, in the past, it's been not wrapping up, not making tackles when you've got guys either behind the line or short gains and getting off the field on third down. So again, make the tackles, get off the field, sprinkle in the run game as much as you possibly can, as effectively as you possibly can, to take possessions away from Miami. Excuse me, because this is going to be that first test of how does this team perform against the upper echelon of the National Football League? Yes, I understand whether or not you want to admit that Miami is the upper echelon.
Mm-hmm.
Stop fooling yourself. The Dolphins are for real. The Dolphins are here. Their head coach, no matter how weird he is, Mike McDaniel is a football genius.
He's hilarious. I hate that he's so hilarious. He really makes me laugh.
Coming from the Kyle Shanahan tree of coaches, he knows how to scheme things perfectly. They go out and they do what the Al Davis way of football was. Let's go get really fast players.
Yep.
Then what did Al Davis do? Nothing. Mike McDaniel is able to utilize them because he knows how to scheme appropriately for these players, and it's working out pretty well for them. So Buffalo has their work cut out for them. Sean McDermott and the defense has their work cut out for them. 51% of America believes Miami will defeat Buffalo, according to the ESPN matchup predictor. I want to say Buffalo's going to win. I feel like Miami might end up pulling out a close one, but after last week, I want to say Buffalo's defense, group of dogs, they're going to come in and they are going to do just enough to hold off Miami.
I'm going to be among the 49% that are voting for Buffalo. I feel like with all of and you're absolutely right in everything you said about Miami and in particular Mike McDaniel. I agree with you. I just think that there's going to be the one thing that I fear as a fan of another AFC East team is when a division rival has a chip on their shoulder. Every time the Buffalo Bills have had some kind of chip on their shoulder, they've clicked, they've meshed, they did whatever they had to do. I mean, they came back week 2 after they had the chip on their shoulder after losing to the Jets week 1. What'd they do? They rebounded with a fantastic day. They kept that going, and now they're going into this week here, week 4, with the major chip on the shoulder because all of the talk has been Miami. Oh, they're going to play Buffalo. They're here now. They're going to beat the old guard. I think it was even Stephen A. Smith or one of the people on his show already has the Dolphins finishing out the rest of the season, winning the East, representing the AFC in the Super Bowl and the whole nine. And I'm like, really? Like, is there not Patrick Mahomes still in the AFC? Is there not a Josh Allen in the AFC? Is there not a Joe Burrow? Like, even though the Bengals weren't doing too well to start, is a long season. Like, you guys got to kind of, come down off of that. And I think Miami is going to be knocked down a peg quite a bit. I feel like this Bills defense, as strong as they are, as cohesive as they are, you saw what they did with Washington this week. I expect more of the same out of them. I don't expect them to necessarily limit the Dolphins to 3 points, but in the same, I do expect them to limit the Dolphins, and I think that they're good enough on offense, especially with this running game opening up now, like it is, to make it a close one. I'm going to be with the 49% of the nation that say Buffalo beats Miami. I think it's going to be a close one. 24-21 is what I'm thinking. Buffalo wins.
Well, and again, I know if you're a Dolphins fan listening to this podcast, first off, I appreciate you tuning in because I know this is hostile territory. But looking at the Dolphins schedule so far right now, they beat the Chargers 34-36. The Chargers are 1-2. They were a play away from being 0-3. The Patriots, they beat 24-17. The Patriots beat a Zach Wilson-led Jets team. Okay, great.
Barely.
And then they beat 24-17. And then they beat up on the Denver Broncos, whom we know all about the Denver Broncos 70-20. But then you look further on their schedule. I mean, they're playing the Bills, they play the Giants, the Panthers, the Eagles, the Patriots, the Chiefs. They've got a relatively easy slate here. So this game for Buffalo, for Miami, for the rest of the NFL is a nice measuring stick to see where this team lines up in accordance to, hey, this Bills defense has been good every single year for quite a while now. How are you going to respond appropriately? Now, again, because the Bills let's be real here, John. The Bills probably should have beat the Jets. That was that was a very, I feel like in any other scenario, that game would have played out differently 10 times out of 10.
Well,
but with everything considered, it's like, okay, I get why that happened. They come out, they dominate the Raiders as one expects. They come out and dominate the Commanders as one expects that they would. So again, you're kind of looking at it both ways where you're like, okay, for Buffalo, this is a measuring stick. For Miami, this is as close to a playoff game, John, as we will get in October
this early on
than we ever have.
Absolutely. And you're right with what this means in particular to these two teams because of the schedule there. I will say to kind of go back to what happened in week 1 with Buffalo. And again, it really could have gone either way there, but I feel like week 1 of the season now, ever since they restructured how they do the preseason and having only 3 games, like originally when they had the 4 preseason games, you would get the starters in for like maybe a half of game 2 and then maybe 3/4 of game 3. And then they would pretty much be sitting out 1 and 4. And they're not doing that now. So I almost wonder if week 1 is by extension, even though it counts, by extension is like that 4th preseason game where they still don't have all of the, the kinks out. And it's really not until weeks 2 and 3 that you start to see everybody kind of, oil on the shoulder and, throwing a lot looser, running a lot looser. So I think that the week 1 was probably kind of an extension of that, but in the same, I think this game is going to be. It's going to be a very competitive game. It's going to be appointment television. But I like I said, I expect the Buffalo Bills to win. I think they're bringing Miami back down to earth after the week that was. They're going to punch them in the mouth, and it'll be close. But I expect the Bills to win.
The Buffalo Bills have allowed 35 points in 3 games. The Miami Dolphins have allowed 71 points in 3 games. I mean, I think that will certainly be a factor. You look at the amount of points Miami scored. Yes, they did score 70 points last week. So if you look at it, even if they
played
scored
the Broncos, who have been
even if
terrible.
they scored, but even if they scored 40 points, which I know this is revisionist history, even if they scored 40 points, they're still at scoring 100 points on the season, which Buffalo has scored 91. So I'm just trying to like create an argument in my head of like what to watch for. I think Buffalo, and this is going to be very cliche, but it's going to be which one's better, Buffalo's offense versus Miami's defense or Miami's offense versus Buffalo's defense. That will decide the game. I don't think, and I think it's going to be whichever offense is more successful. That's the point I'm trying to get to, because that was the no duh comment of the day. Whichever one performs better, they're going to win. Thanks, John Madden. But I'm saying that I don't know that it's going to be a defensive takeover or a for the Bills or the Dolphins. It's going to be which offense can perform better. That will be the team that walks out of Highmark Stadium on Sunday with the victory.
I would agree wholeheartedly with that. That's a very, very good. It's a very good analysis. Saying you're absolutely right. It's going to be which offense versus which defense is better. That's what it's. I just think it's. I personally feel like the Bills have that. Will have that edge. They're a bit more. I don't want to say they're more cohesive, but they seem to be. I don't know what I'm trying to. I don't know what.
I think I know what you're trying to say, John.
I feel like they're just
John. I know what you're trying to say.
What am I trying to say?
Just hit me with it one time.
Dog.
They got that dog in them, baby.
Yes. Well, I think
this Bills defense feels different. Even I'm just going to put this out there because I don't want people to think that I'm going, oh, well, the Bills have started off hot, so Ryan's going to be a homer. No, I want to tell you, even if the Bills defense comes out this week and gets their wheels blown off, gets the doors blown off, gets the car gets thrown in the crusher, like I'm still going to believe in this Bills defense because the one thing they have done good so far is adjust. Leslie Frazier defense is not to talk ill of the dead, but Leslie Frazier defense is the one thing that always struck them was that they would never adjust. They would always play the same thing that they always did. Hey, this is what Leslie Frazier defenses are. This is how it's going to stay. Where Sean McDermott has shown the capability to scheme it up where they can get pressure on the quarterback without blitzing a ton, as you can see by the stats we talked about before, leading the league in sack percentage while leading the league on the opposite end. The lowest blitz rate in the NFL right now. I mean, look at, they are finding ways to get it done. They need to keep that Miami offense in front of them, and they should be perfectly fine. But again, John, if nothing else, we are going to have one action-packed episode of Trust the Podcast next week.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? In closing, I would just like to say, and not really say, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm going to throw it over to your boy, Ryan, Chris Berman, when he says,
no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
I appreciate you getting that in there. That was the other audio clip that I wanted to use this week. So, hey, look at, one got a little used, one got used a little more than the other, but hey, for John Cimino, I am Ryan Wolfe. We are Trust the Podcast.
You're not.
We will catch you same time, same place next week with an action-packed episode, a review, discussion, celebration, post-mortem, whatever it may be of the Bills versus the Dolphins. But as always, thanks again for tuning in, and go Bills.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.